Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. We've got your collection of articles and market signals here from June 2nd, 2025. And, well, right at the top, one headline really jumps out. Meta is set to fully automate ad creation and targeting with AI.
Yeah, that one's
Yeah.
that's quite something. What's really fascinating here is the signal that sends,
Yeah.
ad creation targeting.
Mm.
That's core to Meta's whole business model. It's their engine, basically.
Right.
So automating that fully with AI, that's not just like an optimization. It suggests a really fundamental shift in how these major tech platforms could operate
Mhm.
and how they monetize.
Yeah, potentially massive.
Huge, yeah. A massive potential development.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds enormous. And a clear sign of how AI is getting baked into even the biggest operations out there. But like you said before we started, the source itself,
Yeah,
it just gives us that headline, doesn't it?
exactly. Just the headline, zero details on how they actually plan to, pull that off.
Right. So while that's a pretty tantalizing glimpse into maybe the future of big tech and AI, our mission for this deep dive, looking at this stack of sources you provided, is really to look past that one headline. We need to dive into the other signals, the other market movements highlighted today, kind of reading the tea leaves, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
just to get a snapshot of the crypto world based on, well, this specific information batch.
Exactly. Yeah, since we can't really deep dive into the Meta AI specifics just yet, this collection gives us a great kind of real-time pulse check
Mm.
on everything else happening right now in digital assets. And it covers a whole spectrum,
Like what?
from like global forces hitting the market right down to the movements of really specific, sometimes even niche tokens.
Okay, so let's start with those broader market signals you mentioned. One article points to something geopolitical, stirring the pot a bit.
Right. Yeah, it mentions China issuing some kind of warning amid U.S. tensions. And it specifically states the crypto market is reacting.
Reacting how?
Well, it doesn't detail the exact reaction, but it highlights that critical point we sometimes forget, right? Despite all the talk of decentralization, the crypto market isn't really an island.
Hmm.
It's deeply interconnected with, global macro stuff, geopolitics,
Hmm.
friction between major powers like the U.S. and China. That can absolutely trigger shifts in asset prices, crypto included.
That makes total sense. So external pressures, definitely a factor. Now, shifting from that, potential outflows may be driven by geopolitics. These sources also point to significant inflows from institutional players.
Yes, exactly. There's a key data point in here from a CoinShares report mentioned in one of the sources. It shows a pretty robust $286 million surge into crypto funds just last week.
286 million. Wow.
Yeah, and what really stands out, I think, is that Ether specifically topped the list of purchases during this period of institutional buying.
Okay, so while geopolitics might be causing some jitters, you're saying big money is still actively allocating, particularly towards established assets, like Ether. Why Ether, though? Why topping the list right now? Any hints?
That's the interesting bit. The sources don't explicitly say why,
Yeah.
but, we can kind of infer some possibilities.
Okay.
It could signal continued institutional confidence in maybe Ether's ecosystem growth.
Yeah.
Or upcoming technical upgrades, or perhaps just its position as the dominant smart contract platform after Bitcoin.
Right.
It just suggests that sophisticated investors see something compelling there,
Uh-huh.
despite, the broader market uncertainties.
Got it. So established assets are attracting capital. Makes sense. But hang on, the source also notes a kind of contrasting point here. Potential selling pressures alongside these inflows.
Yes, good catch. It's not just one-way traffic.
So it's not just buy, buy, buy.
Exactly. And this raises an important question, right? Who is doing the selling and why? Is it like institutions taking profits elsewhere while new ones are coming in? Is it retail maybe reacting differently?
Or maybe reacting to those geopolitical worries we just talked about.
Could be. Yeah, could be a response to that. The source gives us this picture of significant inflows, which is bullish. But that mention of selling pressure is a good reminder. It's a dynamic market, lots of competing forces, not just a simple buy everything situation.
Yeah. Paints a more complex picture, doesn't it? Okay. Let's maybe pivot then from the macro picture and institutional moves. Let's zoom in a bit on some specific altcoin news and narratives that caught the eye in these articles. There's some detail here about a familiar name, Shiba Inu, as it were.
Haze, yes. The source describes its price action as oversold, which, usually means it looks like it's dropped maybe too much. Could be set for a bounce, but
There's always a but.
there is. It follows that by noting investors are, and I quote, moving on. It specifically mentions sell-offs and weak market momentum shaking confidence.
That sounds like a classic pattern, right, for assets that surged mainly on hype.
Absolutely classic. Once that initial momentum fades, holders start looking around for the next big thing, the next opportunity.
And the sources even give like a concrete example of this shift, pointing out that whales, those big holders are changing focus. One specific example cited is a whale making a pretty substantial bet, $560,000 on a viral altcoin like Unilabs.
Yeah, that detail is really telling, isn't it? It
Yeah.
vividly illustrates that capital rotation we see. Money isn't just leaving old trends like ETSRAB seems to be. It's actively searching for and moving into new potential narratives, new early-stage projects, hoping to catch the next wave.
Right. Speaking of new narrative, the sources also mention different kinds of projects gaining traction based on their specific focus areas. SUI, for instance, described as gaining steam by riding the L2 hype.
The L2 hype. That refers to all the excitement and, frankly, development around Layer 2 scaling solutions.
Making things faster and cheaper on the blockchain, basically.
Exactly. Technology is designed to do just that. SUI. Well, whether it is an L2 is sometimes debated, but it definitely benefits from that whole narrative. The story around efficient, scalable blockchain infrastructure.
Okay. And then in a completely different corner of the market, Monero is noted for holding steady, described as a key player in the privacy coin markets.
Right. And that just shows you, doesn't it, that distinct niches within crypto are driven by totally different value propositions, whether it's scalability and speed, like the O2 narrative, or strong privacy features like Monero offers. These diverse narratives just coexist.
Okay. And pushing even further out, maybe on the risk curve, one article introduces a project called Qubetics.
Qubetics, yes. It's highlighted as emerging as a, quote, top crypto presale. Now, a presale, as you know, is that early-stage funding round. Investors buy tokens before they hit public exchanges. High risk.
But potentially high reward.
Potentially, yes, if the project succeeds. And the source reports Qubetics is driving significant momentum with its real-world tokenization platform, noting over $17.5 million raised.
$17.5 million in presale. Wow. And real-world tokenization platform, that's the narrative. That's what's driving the momentum.
That seems to be the core narrative presented, yeah.
Yeah.
It focuses on that whole idea of bringing traditional assets onto the blockchain.
Like real estate, art, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Real estate, art, commodities, creating new investment opportunities, maybe new efficiencies. And that $17.5 million figure, assuming it's accurate as reported, indicates pretty strong early belief in that specific use case and maybe their approach to it.
Gotcha. And there's another project mentioned in a similar kind of early stage vein, BlockDAG. The source suggests it could be the next big break at what, 0.001 teen?
A tiny price point, yeah.
And it's even presented as potentially the best crypto to buy now.
Wow.
Drawing comparisons to established giants like Binance Coin, Chiron, Near Protocol.
And that comparison itself tells you a lot, right, about the narrative being pushed. To compare a project at less than a fifth of a cent to market leaders like BNB or Near.
It's bold.
Very bold.
Yeah.
It suggests a focus on identifying assets with just massive potential growth. If, and it's a big if, they can execute and get adoption. It really reinforces that theme we're seeing.
Yeah.
Investors actively hunting for that early stage value, willing to take on higher risk.
For the chance of exponential returns.
Exactly. And using these kinds of bold comparisons to frame that potential.
Okay, so, wow. We've looked at the hint of major tech AI integration from Meta, the impact of geopolitical stuff, institutional money flowing into established assets like Ether, the shift away from older trends like SCR, momentum building around new narratives like L2 hype, real-world tokenization,
Right.
in pre-sales like Qubetics and BlockDAG, and then there's this last one you pulled out from the sources.
Ah, yes. Can't forget this one. The sources note Moonshot launching something called, well, FCK coin on the Solana blockchain, reportedly with a $9.6 million market cap already.
9.6 million. Wow. Okay. That offers a very clear glimpse into the other end of the spectrum in this market, doesn't it?
It really does.
The pure, unadulterated speculation. The meme-driven activity operating right alongside everything else we've just discussed.
Absolutely. And if you just step back for a second, look at this specific snapshot presented across just these few sources. You've got a hint of sophisticated AI from a tech giant. You've got geopolitical warnings hitting the market. You have significant institutional money moving into Ether, capital rotating out of previous hype coins into new narratives and pre-sales, and a newly launched meme coin on Solana hitting a multi-million-dollar market cap.
It really highlights the incredibly diverse and, yeah, frankly, sometimes contradictory forces shaping the digital asset space right now.
It really does.
It's a market driven by cutting-edge tech, global politics, professional investment strategies, evolving retail sentiment, compelling stories about future potential, and,
You gotta go.
yeah, pure internet culture and speculation.
Precisely. These sources, taken together, just give you a real sense of that complex ecosystem where
Yeah.
all these different dynamics are playing out simultaneously.
So let's just briefly recap the key nuggets we extracted from this collection today, just to crystallize it. We saw that horizon signal, right? Major tech like Meta integrating sophisticated AI into core functions.
Hmm.
We observed significant institutional fund movements, particularly favoring established assets like Ether, but also alongside mentions of selling pressure.
Right, that push and pull.
Yeah, we saw clear signs of investor focus shifting among altcoins, moving away from older, maybe faded trends like Eshibe towards newer pre-sales and specific narratives, real-world tokenization, L2 hype, these early-stage projects getting compared to market leaders.
That search for the next big thing.
Exactly. And of course, the ever-present influence of macro factors like geopolitics, and the undeniable force of pure speculation, exemplified by projects like, well, F your K-coin, clearly visible.
It's definitely a vivid cross-section, isn't it? A market trying to figure itself out, influenced by everything from C-suites in Silicon Valley to global tensions to, individual investors chasing the next viral trend on Solana.
And that leaves us with this thought to maybe chew on, drawn directly from the contrasts in these sources today. Just consider that juxtaposition. A major tech company hinting at sophisticated AI to automate billions in ad revenue, alongside news of a meme coin launching on Solana, reportedly hitting a multi-million-dollar market cap, all happening on the same day that institutional funds are pouring hundreds of millions into Ether. What does this specific snapshot tell you, our listener, about the wild, diverse, and sometimes just baffling forces shaping digital assets right now?
A lot to think about indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us.